Ribs. I was in the mood for some ribs today, and there's obviously a lot of ways to make them, but I'm in kind of a lazy mood, so let's just make them as easy as humanly possible. That's not good. So ribs are just kind of like any other kind of tougher cut of meat. They're not gonna do well if you just throw them in the oven and don't do anything about them. There's really only one trick to any tougher cut of meat, and that is water. Water is just gonna break down all of that connective tissue a lot better than air is, so let's get into this. These are my ribs. I'm using baby back ribs, but feel free to use whatever kind of ribs you want. For various reasons, I think that the easiest way to do this without making a mess is to line your baking tray with some foil and parchment paper and then put your ribs on top. I'm just kind of riffing on the seasonings here. I don't think measurements are super important, but make sure you season everything from up high. It's gonna give a more equal distribution of your seasoning. You can also mix all your spices in a bowl or buy a pre-made seasoning blend, but just make sure that you don't skimp on your seasonings. I'm going on with salt, pepper, garlic powder, paprika, and brown sugar. Once you've applied all your seasonings, show your meat a little love and give it a nice massage. And like any good massage, make sure you don't forget about the backside. Alright, so our meat's totally seasoned, we're ready to go, our oven's at 350, and now we're just gonna go pop it in that oven. And the great part about this is now I have time to make some coffee or just go sit and watch all my TikTok videos. I kept myself busy for about an hour and then took these out of the oven. But our ribs aren't done yet. This whole first part's main objective was to give these ribs a nice color and a nice crust. But we haven't really done anything to tenderize the meat or use any water to start breaking down some of that tougher tissue. And the simplest way to do this is with steam. So we're gonna continue the spa treatment for our ribs by building them a little steam room. I'm gonna grab another piece of foil and wrap it over the top and then just use the foil that I was already using to create this packet. This is gonna trap all of the water and steam that's naturally evaporating from the ribs and give them a moist environment to help break them down more. Now that they're packaged up, back into the oven. We'll do a more complicated version of all of this in another video, but for now I'm just gonna use some store-bought barbecue sauce and thin it out with a little bit of water to create a glaze. I didn't exactly measure this, but I just kept adding water until I felt like it was thin enough to spread a nice thin coat over the top. I wanted my ribs completely fall off the bone, so I turned off my oven and let them just rest in the steam package for longer. I would say the total cook time for this is about 30 minutes to an hour depending on how tender you want them, and you're shooting for somewhere between 195 and 205 degrees. The lower temperature is less tender, the higher temperature is more tender. When you're ready to finish these off, turn your oven on to broil and paint a nice thin even layer of barbecue sauce or whatever glaze you have over the top. Just circling back to something I said earlier, if we didn't use foil in the beginning, all of this black stuff completely caked onto the foil would be stuck on my pan and very hard to get off. Now we're going to throw these in the broiler. You want to make sure that your rack is pretty close to the top so the broiler actually is close enough to caramelize that glaze. Leave them in the broiler for 2 to 5 minutes depending on how caramelized you want this and how close it is to the broiler. And that's all she wrote. They're pretty much done now. I let mine rest for about 5 minutes so that they were easier to get off of the foil because like I said, mine were particularly tender, pretty much falling off the bone. If that's not your jam, just cook them a little less. I left mine in the oven in the steam package for about an hour and then let them rest with the oven off for another 30 minutes. So if you want them juicy but not falling off the bone, maybe just shoot for 30 minutes with a shorter rest time as well. Today I was in the mood for something that looked a little bit like this. I didn't want to make a whole plate out of this, so I just grabbed some pickles out of the fridge and pigged out. Get it? Pig. In any case, like I said, there's multiple ways to make ribs, and I'm going to go over more of them in future videos, so drop a comment with what type of style you'd like to see next, and if you don't want to miss any of these videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.